My name is Sally Reynolds. You're very welcome to join us for the Media Learning session this afternoon as part of our Wednesday webinar series. Today's session is on decoding extremism, how media literacy can counter online radicalisation. You're very welcome to join us for the session this afternoon. So just a quick summary of who will be joining us this afternoon for the session. We are delighted to have 4 speakers. First will be Lynn Davies, Professor, University of Birmingham, but also from ConnectFutures in the UK. Then Edvin Sandström will be joining us. He's a researcher at the Centre for Preventing Violence, Extremism in Sweden. He'll be presenting Building Digital Resistance Through Testimonial Theatre. Our third speaker this afternoon is Serkan Ünsal, who is a political educationalist. He works with Medialepfade in Germany. And finally, Jordy Nijenhuis, who is the co-founder of Dare to be Grey from the Netherlands, all with really interesting presentations and thoughts to share with us this afternoon on the topic of decoding extremism. We will take a moment after each presentation for questions and for discussion, and we hope at the end we'll also have an opportunity to have a good conversation and a chat with people who are with us this afternoon. So let's not waste too much more time because we have 4 busy presentations to get through. We're going to start with Lynn. Over to you, Lynn.
Thank you very much. Very pleased to be here and part of...
Don't hear you, Lynn, unfortunately. You do? Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we do hear you.
Okay.
Without any problem.
All right. Shall I start again? Anyway, I'm very pleased to be here with such an interesting lineup, and I'm really looking forward more to listening to everybody else. I get to go first, which is very good. I've been asked to look more about the research side of things rather than, if you like, the practice, except that the sort of work that we're doing is really all research in the sense every time we do work with young people, as I'll talk about, it's about research. So I'm hoping this session will see as an introductory one for the ones that will follow. I'm hoping this sharing screen works. Can you see my first slide?
Yes, we do, Lynn. Thank you very much.
I've actually slightly tweaked the title because I'm saying decoding extremism, can media literacy counter online radicalisation? And for all sorts of reasons, which I will explain, I think it's a huge field and nothing that we can say with any certainty. I hope the others will maybe not agree with me, but we'll try to look at this hugely complex and ever-changing field and keep it as a question for now. How do I get to the next slide?
Yes.
That's it. Okay, we're working. ConnectFutures, we are an organisation working, researching, training, facilitating with a whole pile of people around extremism, radicalisation, now gangs, knife crime, hate speech, and increasingly on fake news, disinformation, misinformation. And we do massive programs with loads of young people, teachers, practitioners, and community. And I think we learn the whole time. We have to keep changing all of our interventions with new things. We're doing work now on the riots. We had riots in Southport, which you may have heard of, after the stabbings of young girls, which led to massive riots based on misinformation, malinformation. And so we've got interventions, talking with people about what to do after riots. How can you prevent riots happening from misinformation? I'm trying to go down the way I normally go down. Here we are. Okay, I'll start with a video. I hope this works. I hope you see from that one how easy it is to manipulate content, visuals, to create fear, to create panic. So it's a video that we use a lot. I think it's a very interesting one on how easy it is to change things. Young people can do it very easily. They can edit things, but it's an interesting way in. Okay.
You're doing fine, Lynn. Don't worry.
Am I doing fine?
Yes,
it won't move quickly enough. Okay, just so again, introductory. These huge processes of sites of online radicalization. I've just got a few on here, and the wiggly lines are really about how they're all interconnected. I think ages ago, when we were talking about anti-extremism, we tended to just divide into two, ISIS and far right and now we've got masses of platforms, different sorts of organizations, outfits, all promoting, peddling their various versions of extremism, violence, hatred. And within these, all sorts of subsets. So it's not just anti-Semitic, but different sorts of organizations. I just picked one up just today, on neo-Nazi accelerationist group. Have you heard of this? National Socialist Resistance, links with Russian and Ukrainian syndicates, anti-degeneracy. And that's an interesting one, isn't it? It's going back to eugenics, back to you don't want degenerate people like you like the disabled or those with particular characteristics. So each of these processes are broken down into other sorts of extremist groups. It's almost impossible to keep track on them. And although we ask teachers, to keep up to date, you can't. 1, 2, 3. Sometimes, here we are. The different terminologies, which you will know under the heading of digital information disorder, which includes misinformation, disinformation, sometimes called malinformation, the ones that are deliberately spread, propaganda, which deals with the emotions, and different ways, as we saw in the video, of presenting that false connections, content that's misleading, imposter contents, and different ways in which you can manipulate and spread misinformation and disinformation. I'm interested in fogging, and that's a technique of pushing out a whole mass of data so you don't know what to believe. It's no longer about black and white thinking about what's true and what's false. When you're presented with a whole pile of, you deliberately, with a whole pile of different ways of understanding a context, you give up not being able to understand anything and not knowing who to trust. And I'll come back to trust because that's a very important thing in information disorder. It's eye-watering now, the escalations in social media impact. Just this month, I'm looking at TikTok accounts, 14 accounts on white supremacist mass shooters you can get up and have a look at. I don't need to read all these to you. A fourfold increase in misogynistic content, a dramatic rise in fake news in the Canadian pre-elections, role of the internet in adults, and this is something we need to come back to as well. 52% of adults use social media now. It's no longer about what you read in the newspaper. But they are not digital natives. They're not clued up. Glorifying harmful behavior. And teenagers, 70% of teenagers in this country have seen real world violence on the internet, fighting, violence, stabbings, murders, everything. 70% of teenagers are watching this stuff. What can you do? And how can you know all the different online spaces? This is just some of the examples of all the different platforms that are out there. And there's a lot more. Go. I've gone too far. Different sorts of ways in which they're manifested. There's just a few examples of conspiracy, hate, and how, again, things are manipulated. The picture on the right showing Muslims going into prayer was pushed out during COVID to say, oh, Muslims are breaking the lockdown, they're all going praying and they shouldn't be praying. And the other ones are sort of anti-Semitic ones. So different ways in which hate is manifested online with imagery, with false imagery, again, context, changing the context. I want to stress the intersections of gender, the manosphere, violence and extremism. And we know a lot about toxic masculinity. Everyone's heard of Andrew Tate. And a lot of the teachers that we work with are seeing that manifested in kids saying, this is how we want to be a man. Also, violence against women justified by religious ideology. Lots of teenage children have seen social media encouraging violence against women and girls. So there's a lot of gender-based disinformation. And we're finding female journalists, politicians disproportionately harassed. And again, misogynist radicalization, misogyny as a feature of right-wing terrorism. So it's trying to understand those intersections between gender, violence, extremism, and how they all weave together, and you can't just tackle one on its own. Incels, you will have heard of, involuntary celibacy. Try that one again. Involuntary celibacy. Again, hatred of women and promotion of a particular form of masculinity. And links again with extremist groups, with the Taliban. It's a whole mess, and it's very difficult to break into that and to understand how online spaces are promoting that. Now there's an example there. Islam is the only cure for feminism on the incel websites. It's mad. Online gaming is another area to be watching. See if I can get this video up. And you see there the way that the online spaces are using the gaming sorts of arenas, line of duty, and translating that into, in this particular instance, pro-ISIS propaganda. And so you're attracting young people through the visuals and the excitement and the adventure that you get through games manifested now in those ISIS propaganda videos. A quick, how am I doing for time? A quick burst through the types of media literacy. This is revision in a way. And the sorts of, if you do want to do media literacy, what are the different ways you can do that? I've divided these into 5, but it could be lots of different ways. Technical, when you learn about algorithms, filter bubbles, echo chambers, and so on. Manipulation. And increasingly how social media influencers are now also being used. And we've got to understand that. It's not the standard ones coming from particular organizations, but influencers are being themselves manipulated. We find young people now increasingly know about algorithms. They know about filter. There's stuff going on in schools, the teachers are talking about it. But what we also find is that their use of our understanding is patchy. They can't be bothered. They know it's all out there, but they can't be bothered to fact check. It's inconsistent the way that they're actually thinking about it. And it's trying to build habits rather than just give them straightforward information, which is hard. And source checking, try to get people thinking about why people are posting this stuff. What's the motivations? What are they trying to do to you? We do quite a lot on the grooming lines, how young people are groomed into accepting not just disinformation, but accepting being drawn into a particular family of extremist groups or cults. There's work on legal, I'll put here as legal, the difference between hate speech and free speech, financial harms, and that ties in with moral, ethical ideas, and what is now called digital citizenship, which is being a good citizen, being reciprocal, understanding what it is to be a good citizen on the internet. Basically, being nice to each other. I know that sounds wet, but it's trying to do the contrast to this knee-jerk reaction of putting out hate stuff, putting out bitchy stuff, putting out trolling, putting out stuff which puts people down and getting a kick out of that. It's difficult to replace that with getting a kick out of being nice to people, but there must be something we can do around that. And I'll come back to this finally, active participatory, not just learning about misinformation, but being active and participatory in creating your own content, making propaganda, having dialogue, discussion, deep listening. So you're working together to create new ways of using the internet and understanding it. And we're finding that is the most productive. I'm sure we'll come back. So different problems, different online solutions. I won't read all of those, but there's the usual things about critical thinking, which you know about, understanding reality, understanding consequences of what you do when you post something or share something or like something. Where does it go? What's the consequences of your immediate actions? We find young people quite drawn by that. And the usual tips to stay safe. How can you stay safe on the internet? What can you do in reality? And again, teachers and young people quite like that sort of area. Hate crime reporting, one action you can do is report. And in this country, there's lots of arenas you can report what you see if you see online violence, hate crime, and so on. Although, of course, the government would probably shut down Tell Mama. It's getting funding for all of these organizations, which is hard. Have I got a quick case study of evaluation? We got a fake news program, which we ran, just an example of 4 London sites. We did that, activity-led sessions. And go. Why doesn't it go? We surveyed 150 young people, and it was quite pleasing. 90% said they'd better understood misinformation. 85% were more likely to report fake news, which is great. And 90% of people were confident they could identify trustworthy people in their lives. I think that's getting harder and harder, but we were pleased with the program, that it does work in the sense that it's good data, but is it the truth? It doesn't account for everybody. We've got no evidence of long-term change in behavior. If people understand it more, that's great, and they understand disinformation, but does it actually change what they're going to do? It's difficult getting to different young people with different complex needs. We're doing work with children, young people with autism, ADHD, various neurodiversity, plus refugees, plus, we've got sessions with young people who are non-verbal, and it's, having to make sure our sessions speak to young people with and adults with a whole pile of, who come with a whole pile of different needs. And what we're talking about, and I'm sure this will come up, is not our needs as facilitators, but their needs. What do they need to know? What do they need to do? Who do they need to be online? And it's working with young people's needs to understand where they're coming from, which is one of the hardest things. So which of the most strategies is the most effective? Different cohorts, as I said, respond to different inputs. Not much evidence that counter narratives work, although I can be disabused of that. But the key thing, research is starting to show that persuasion is less effective than participation, getting participants to create their own content or narratives, which is actually quite difficult because a lot of the schools are banning phones in schools, so we can't get the kids to practice when they're to create their content on their phones if they're not allowed to use them. But we're working through that. And training their peers and training adults, working upwards so that they're training the families. Okay, last slide. You'll be glad. Okay, not quite the last slide. One of the things we're finding, it's important to work with the family. Parents and families may also be extremists. I knew that from working on the Salman Abedi case with the Manchester bombings. And what do you do when the parents and family are also part of the riots, when they're out there throwing the stones and attacking asylum centres? Parents may be involved. And there's some research we've been doing with OSCE finds that the role of parental engagement is crucial. Not just schools telling parents how they can check their young people's internet use, but working collaboratively so that parents are part of the solution and not just being told what to do. Joint training. Okay. So 3 main conclusions. Not lasting evidence about what works, but as I said, just to repeat, not one-way persuasion, but broadly based active participation. Gender sensitive, intersectional, all these things coming together, trying to understand how they play off against each other, and the involvements of adults and parents within a community context. Thank you.
Lynn, thank you so much. I think those, particularly your last slide with those 3 points, I think we'll all take away from that, and also the persuasion not being as effective as participation. There's a couple of questions, a couple of comments as well too in the chat. Maybe you can have a look at it as well afterwards. There's also there's one person who'd like to reach out to you in terms of joint research, interested in your research activities.
Great. Yeah.
I'd like to just pick up maybe Amy's question for you, just in the questions and points that are there. As well as dis and misinformation, the grooming and emotional manipulation tactics that are being used to radicalize people is also part of the issue in terms of media literacy. Someone will not listen to facts and correct information if they're emotionally charged and activated. Are there any solutions or work done on this in terms of, I suppose, de-emotionalizing, if there is such an expression, but taking the emotion out of the messages that people are receiving? Any comment on that?
I don't think you can take the emotions out of it, but the sort of work that is being done, I think we do, is to talk directly with young people about, well, not just young people, adults as well, by saying, what does this do to you? Let's just like when I showed the very first one with the little boy, what do you feel? And therefore trying to get them to understand those emotions that they're feeling. Do you feel fear? Do you feel hatred? Do you feel that you want to go and punch somebody? What do you feel? And if you can discuss that with young people about what they're getting from that, and then you can get to this whole question of why do they want you to feel that way? How are they manipulating your emotions, and getting young people to understand how their emotions can be triggered and manipulated, I think is one of the first steps that we would do in discussion. Does that answer the question?
I think it does indeed. I think you're talking about making it explicit indeed. So it's part of the process is understanding what you're feeling. So look, thank you very much. You're going to stay with us, Lynn, anyway, and hopefully we'll be able to get everybody back together and have share around some of the ideas. I think the research work in this area, of course, is really fascinating. But I'd like to move on now to Edvin Sandström, researcher, as I mentioned earlier, with the Centre for Preventing Violence Extremism from Sweden. So Edvin, over to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, perfect. All right there. Thank you so much, Lynn. You set up the framework, which we also really recognize in Sweden. And today I'm going to talk with you more directly how we, in one model, try to build more digital resilience. And before I begin, I would like to say that we are from a central government, and our main target groups are professionals working within local police, the school, the social sector. So we aren't really tasked to target like pupils or students within the schools. But since the development now in Sweden, we have seen more, concerns coming from the schools. We are kind of in between. So this is how we try to also cope with that. So today I'm going to show how we try to use the model of testimonial theater to reach out to a broader audience, which is kind of new for us. So it will be interesting for us to share with you today. So I'll see if I can move on there. Yeah, perfect. So I will guide you through, what I spoke about, the increased concerns about lone actors in Sweden, which is, as you know, kind of, you can put in a lot to that concept, but I'll explain it a bit more. We are a Center for Preventing Violent Extremism. And as we heard also Lynn telling us that we also in Sweden, when we began back in 2018, we work mainly with organized extremist groups or milieus, as we call them in Sweden. But today, the problem is much more focused on lone actors who does not necessarily have a home base in a single milieu, so to speak, but they move between different ideologies. And then I'll speak about more how we try to understand with a new audience, trying to understand this phenomena through this theater model, and how we tailor it so it will be effectful enough for the school world in Sweden. And so far sharing the key insights we have gathered so far, because this is an ongoing project, as you will see. Perfect. Okay, so I told you that our center started back in 2018, so we aren't that old, but not that young either. So I've been part of building this center with my colleagues who come from both research and are, from the local police. We have social workers, so we have a good mixed group here. And what we've seen, and also following closely what the police and the security police in Sweden follow, is that more attacks recently have been acted out by lone actors who, I would say, for like 5 years ago was quite easy to follow their footsteps back to right-wing extremism or other type of extremism. But today we see a more mixed concern, and with a much more, to use the word, the fogging idea of that is a big mix of ideologies that we can trace back, because probably, as you know, and those who have studied lone actors, we see a lot of leakage in our cases as well. And this is also how we have tried to blend it in our preventive measures, since we are focusing very much on the protective factors rather than perhaps the risk factors, since we're a Center for Preventing Violent Extremism, even if, both are very important, right? But this is just to set the scene, that also the growing concern about school attacks. So I would actually say that we are now also like a center for school attacks. So we are like the coordinating, we have a hotline that professional from school can call and report a concern, and then we can kind of guide them how they will deal with this in their local communities. Perfect. Okay, so one way we are trying to work with this, and especially in this, trying to understand the online threat and the concerns, how professionals in Sweden can work better and understand online behavior and identities. We work with a theater called ConnectFutures, who's been doing like this model testimonial theater since back almost 20 years now. They've been dealing with wicked problems like gang violence, women in gangs, and a lot of various different ideas. So this project started actually back in 2023 when they were doing a project about incels, and they contacted us for like advice and research. And then we sat down, we had a talk, and we realized that maybe we from the center could also be part of writing the manuscript and be part of this process. So this also was when the idea became broader, in a sense that we taking the incel problems to a broader like lone actor phenomena, trying to show that the threat picture we see is you know, there are incels, of course, but there are also a broader community here. So we spoke with them, and it turned out to be a great interplay between them and us. And we co-wrote the manuscript, even if they were like, you know, leading here. They asked us for expertise in, you know, trying to give an inside perspective of a lone actor, and based on cases in Sweden, especially. Yes, we can move to the other one. Right. So first we had, as you know, you saw on the other slide that we already the performance is already up and running. And just to go back very quick, what we mean with testimonial theater is that it's based on real people's stories. So we have done interviews with school shooters in Sweden, and those who have, you know, failed attempts as well, those who are in exit programs. So Teater Frihetshuset, they are based at Frihetshuset, which is like a NGO in Sweden working with youth, and have exit programs both for criminal gangs members, but also in violent extremism especially. And they've been working, you know, before it was very much focused on right-wing extremism. Today, they also see this broader phenomena that younger males being radicalized online, that is like a new target group for them. So this is also how we try to help and support one another. But now when we, you know, got like a new assignment from our government, that we are turning also to, like, you know, spread this to a broader audience, even though if we have other authorities in Sweden that their main task is to give, you know, help up with this thing, we are also now, you know, trying to help out with this piece then. So before we go out to a school, we, of course, to promote the play, and we try as much as possible to plan it with the local PCV stakeholders. And that in Sweden would be that we first call and connect the local crime preventer, who often has PCV part of their business. So we try to sell in the performance. We show them how important it is that they take part and go to the school where we'll play and, you know, be part of what will come to the post talk or the after talk, which is a very important part of this model. After we're doing that, we send out the educational material, you know, very short material, 3 pages, discussing this phenomena, very much based on the questions that you can ask, you know, raise in the classroom about online behavior, how you experience yourself and friends using various online platforms, and, you know, have a discussion about that. And in relation to risk factors that can be, you know, related to lone actors in a kind of more, as I told you, protective way, that we are not so direct, but more like, you know, how can you understand a friend who you feel that you're, you know, have a concern for. So it's a more soft material, I would say. And then we play the performance, which is around 1 hour, and then we have a 30 minutes post talk, I call it here, just to get a nice 5 Ps. to get in the model. But it's like at the after talk, which is for us very interesting to follow, to see if this is something that could be part of a theory of change in this field, and if that could be also used to various other models we try to work with in this field. Yeah, the last slide. So key insights we gathered so far, and I moved quite fast, but I'll try to be on time. This fall we will start to do the touring around for the schools, and we expect to play for over 200 schools around Sweden, but we have already played for like 12 classes here in Stockholm, and the insights are drawn from that kind of observations. And what we've seen is the power of what we thought in the beginning also, and learned from the civil society organization using theater as a preventive measure, is that when you have everyone in a room, everyone see the same play, there is something that gets going, the dialogue. And it's very interesting how people start to speak about their identity, how they behave, but also how they talk about how they want to change their behavior, but they find it very difficult. And also how teachers reach out to us, both during the after talk, but also afterwards, that they know a lot of good models, but they are also triggered how to use them more directed, and also how to they ask if we know more, and they are very eager to learn more about this, which also comes down to science and interplay, which actually means the risk and protective factors, the knowledge about that, and the importance of the interplay and collaboration between authorities, but especially the target audience within schools. That we can help one another with the reporting concerns in a way that not just feels like that we have to securitize everything, but just to show that we care for one another, and it's important to follow up signs of loneliness and aggressive, hate speech that also, are shared among classmates and that stuff. So it's been very interesting to see how students have talked to one another about science and interplays, and we learned very much from them. So that will be important part of our evaluation process after this, which are done by, as I saw, both us, but also external actors, which is an ongoing operation as well. And lastly, I wanted to say that also the talk about responsibility here is very interesting, because they kind of do the work for us. And this is very much how we have worked since we began, that trying to find, instead of assessment models, we work very much with support models, which means that we are trying to handle these concerns within the social care system in Sweden, and not try to find so many new solutions, which is a problem, at least for us in our country, that if we face kind of like a new phenomena like lone actors, there need to be something new in like how we handled it. But we learn from experience that we have to sit calm and try to learn more about it, and also try to figure out how we can use it in existing system, just to get an effect from that. And this is also important, how they see their own responsibility within this line of actions. I can stop there. Thank you.
Edvin, thank you very much. It's a really interesting approach. I think people have a lot of questions. I think just in terms of Bella's question, and I also wanted to ask you as well too, it's amazing that you have this kind of very good communication going on, the dialogue. The dialogue is not conducted by the teacher themselves. Who's conducting the dialogue with the students? Is that somebody you bring in, or who is actually responsible for that?
Yeah. As I mentioned, when we set up here in Stockholm, we had members, me from the center, but also from the ConnectFutures, who are really, they've been doing this for a long time, meeting different audiences who come from very, challenged areas, and so we try to meet them and ask and be very simple in our communication. So, but as I told before, we send out material before, so they can discuss this before they see the show, so they are kind of prepared for what's coming, and then it's easy to have an after dialogue, which also has proven to be very good and important within this model. Because if we just show the performance and have an after dialogue, it's often very quiet. So we learned that it's quite important to have some kind of preparation before.
Yes, you really have three phases then.
Yeah.
Kind of work on that. Yeah, thank you. Shalini wants to know what was common thing you found that makes young people radical? Anything?
Yeah, okay, yeah, specific in Sweden, or how we build kind of the character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, you know, but at least we'll see in Sweden, we have kind of a stronghold from the, you know, small right-wing cells that are quite big globally. I would say that they have still an impact on lone actors in Sweden. If you go back to see the leakages and how the online behavior has been shaped, it's very much focused on the anti-Semitic statesmen, but also, you know, coming from incels and a blending of ideologies. So it's a very complex picture, but it is very much focused on people now. Before I told you they were more organized before, but now we see from around 12 up to 14-year-olds that are, you know, after the pandemic are left alone at home and you know, engaged in this stuff. So this is why we try to work with the school system to actually show how important their protective role is in society, and especially for these kind of matters.
It strikes me you have a very thankless job, because in fact, if you're effective, nothing happens. So it's a difficult one to prove to fundraisers in terms of how effective you are, which I think is probably true of everybody. Actually, I see Jordy nodding as well too. I think that's probably something that faces everybody in this world. Edvin, you're going to stay with us anyway until the end. So thank you so much for your input. The link is there, of course, to your resources. I don't know how much of them are available in English for people to access, but of course, probably with Google Translate, people can access your resources relatively easily. Very happy to introduce then Serkan. Serkan, thank you. Serkan Ünsal from Medialepfade. I'm making another mess of it, I'm afraid, Serkan, but I'll leave it over to you to make a better pronunciation of your organization. Over to you.
Yes, thank you. Hoping everybody can hear me and see my screen. Everything is working?
Yep.
Okay, perfect, because I have a two-screen setup here. So I'm kind of juggling in between. Okay. So yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for joining in such high numbers. I'm Serkan Ünsal. I'm based in Berlin, working for Medialepfade.org, which is an organization working on media literacy and political education and the intersection of these two. And today I'll be sharing on our work on preventing online radicalization, specifically focusing on the project AntiAnti, which I'm a part of, which has been running since 2018. And I'll walk you through our approach and showcase one of our more practical methods, which is currently a prototype that I'm going to show you the current state of. And yeah, let's discuss it with you. So say a little bit about Medialepfade. So as I said, it's an educational organization. We try to develop innovative concepts at the intersection of media and politics and learning. So we run several different projects on digital literacy. One is called Jugendhackt, which means like the youth is coding. Yeah, which basically teaches young people to code. Another project that we did is called Datascope, which helps people understand algorithmic systems. And one that is currently running and that I'm also going to show you a method of later is ULAT, Unlearning Anti-Feminism on TikTok. Yeah, and the name kind of speaks for itself, I would say. And yeah, all our work is emphasizing critical reflection and empowerment in digital spaces. So more on the project AntiAnti, because I would say this project is a pillar also of our organization Medialepfade.org, because it's been founded in 2018, already foreseeing certain developments. And we've already also expanded to Brandenburg, which is the province or state surrounding Berlin, in 2024, and also have our offerings, trainings and workshops there. So yeah, as I said, we work on the intersection of media education, political education. We focus on primary prevention in multiple ideological areas, and have a special attention to how they manifest online. So the two main pillars of the project consist of workshops for youth and training for educators who work with youth. Yeah, so about our prevention framework, we try to integrate media literacy with political education rather than treating them separately. So we focus on, in the project AntiAnti, in online realms, focusing on decoding subliminal extremist narratives that often go undetected in everyday media consumption. So we do that. We also try to understand platform mechanics and business models behind these corporations and platforms, helping young people recognize how the content is also algorithmically amplified. So yeah, we try to build ambiguity tolerance, as we see it's crucial to counter the simplistic worldviews offered by extremist content. So in our approaches, methodologically, we try to combine critical media analysis with active media production. That's one thing that we try to do in all of our methods. The method I'm going to show you a little later is more focused on the critical media analysis, but then like within a whole workshop day, it would be followed up by an active media production part. That's one part. And yeah, we also try to create a safe analysis space that protects participants without allowing them to, allowing them to examine problematic content. And by, in order to create like a safer space for analysis, we use simulated platform interfaces rather than actual platforms to maintain ethical standards, not trying to reproduce problematic content, or only to show it to an extent to be able to talk about it and still be able to control the learning environment. So we try to, yeah, empower learners. We try to empower young people to develop their own critical analysis skills rather than simply telling them what to think. So our prevention framework is roughly based in, grounded in the Dagstuhl triangle model for digital education. So this was developed also a couple of years ago already, but it still works for us, by the German Informatics Society, Gesellschaft für Informatik. And this model proposes three essential perspectives for comprehensive digital education. So first of all, the technological, then the social and cultural, and then the application perspective. So in our work, what we try to do is we try addressing all these three dimensions. So from the technological perspective, we help young people understand how platforms actually work. We examine algorithms, recommendation systems, data collection practices. Yeah, and from the social and cultural perspective, we critically examine media impact, power structures, values embedded in digital platforms, also how especially extremist content spreads and normalizes. And the application perspective focuses on practical skills for navigating digital spaces responsibly, reflecting on consumption habits for like a more sovereign use of the platforms. So yeah, we are facing a whole set of challenges in Germany, but also in Europe, also on the whole on the whole planet. don't need to go very deep into it. I think we're all very aware of it. But yeah, the AfD's performance among first-time voters in 2024, and like also this year, there was like the election was already put like a couple of months ahead, was kind of a wake-up call for democratic education. And research shows a direct connection between right-wing content on TikTok and youth voting patterns. So we are witnessing increasing connections between online radicalization and offline actions. And the witnessing that these boundaries of acceptable discourse are shifting, with previously extreme positions becoming normalized also in classrooms. And so our work, platforms and content types, our work currently prioritizes TikTok due to its significant influence among German youth. We also monitor Instagram and messenger services like Telegram. And we do, like, the content types we target is, we do analyze pseudo-journalistic formats that mimic legitimate news without journalistic standards. We look at political messaging embedded, like political messages embedded in lifestyle content that is also concerning because it reaches audiences that are not actively seeking this content. So yeah, just a very brief understanding of engagement logic and platform mechanics. So platform algorithms favor provocative content that generates strong reactions. I bet this is also not new to you. Engagement typically increases as content approaches but does not cross platform policy boundaries. And extremist actors deliberately exploit these mechanisms, crafting content to maximize emotional responses. A little bit more on TikTok. I need to hurry, I'm just realizing. So yeah, on TikTok, sounds function simultaneously as content, meme, as hashtags, and also extremist actors use sound strategically to reach new target groups. Maybe that's all I'm going to say to this. It's just a very relevant thing to look at when talking about TikTok. I brought one video just like to show you. I hope the audio works. So it's about like alt-right, new right aesthetics. Did you hear everything? Was it audible?
Sound is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is an example of like fash wave and trad wave aesthetics. The use of it, it's kind of a style that's used on TikTok to glorify traditional lifestyle. So it's like a heavily edited video. The sound, if you look for the sound, you will find a lot of different new right content that also uses that same sound. And yeah, these aesthetics incorporate pop culture references while subtly introducing extremist political messages. Just one example. There would be another example I'm going to skip. An example for pseudo-journalism, trying to copy successful mainstream formats, street interviews, also trying to normalize right-wing ideologies, representing them through seemingly neutral formats. So also appearance and the speech and filming locations are deliberately, they deliberately avoid associations with right-wing ideologies. So it's very subliminal and masked. So yeah, this example, Cats at the Neuzeit, is reaching hundreds of thousands of kids in Germany. And the caption is like, should a biological man go into a gym where usually women go? So that's like the caption, or that's the hook of the interview, and is watched by a lot of people. A little more sorry, I'm rushing a little bit through this, but I think everything is so important that I want to talk about it all. But yeah, there's a couple of specific online strategies I wanted to highlight. So maybe you've also heard about them. So dog whistling is a term, like it's dog whistling uses coded language that appears innocent to most viewers, but signals specific meanings to insiders. So, for example, drink milk every day is a dog whistle that white supremacists use on TikTok. Another one would be hashtag hijacking, so taking over trending topics to increase visibility for their own ideological content. In this case, I brought an example of Stolzmonat, Stolz meaning pride in German, but Stolz, so it's a hashtag that's hijacked to counter Pride Month by like the German pride, which would be a different kind of pride, if you understand what I mean. There's also specific emojis as coded signals. So Pepe the Frog, you might have heard of them. Also the kiwi emoji that stands for like biological sex being gender. So also in the wake of the current developments in the UK, it's also interesting to look at how this kiwi emoji is used. And there's also a bunch of numerical codes you can always see. So 182888. So it's like different Nazi tropes that are informed by this. So like the numbers stand for letters in the alphabet that then come up with like things that I might not want to reproduce right in the space, but just important to kind of be aware of what's going on online. So yeah, just a very brief look into the method. This is a method that we're using. It's a puzzle. So it's basically a prototype that we're using right now. So it's a screenshot of a TikTok screen, and then there's ways of interacting with it. So this method helps young people decode implicit and anti-feminist messages on social media, and it's designed for participants 14 years and older, and is a prototype that is developed by the ULAT project that I mentioned on learning anti-feminism on TikTok. And once it's finalized, we will publish it as an open educational resource. It will be in German, but it's also translatable for educators to use in schools and youth centers. And we're focusing on anti-feminism. And I think all the like the previous speakers have also touched on anti-feminism because it's so like dominant, because it does function as a bridge narrative connecting various extremist groups, including the New Right, men's right activists, like Islamist fundamentalist actors. So that's why we wanted to also have like a workshop or method tackling anti-feminism. So yeah, it's kind of like a game board, and you have different ways of interacting with it. So it's for one, let me see. I'm just gonna do maybe 1 minute and I'm gonna be done. I hope that's okay.
It's fine.
It's fine, Serkan.
Is it loading? Should be loading. I have like a embedded. Oh yeah, it is loading.
Yeah, it's coming.
Come on. Come on. So this is the digital whiteboard that we work with right now. So you could imagine like we work in small groups, students work in small groups on one example. So we have like one example here, another example here, and they work like in groups of 3 or 4. And they have all of this printed out. So they have this board, like this screen printed out that they can look at, that we all also censored so they cannot follow the actor, just like understand what it's about. And then we have like different content domains that they need to like kind of understand and like put onto the TikTok board. We have like a worksheet that they go through step by step and work through. So it's about like, okay, first like identify the content domains. Is it like what's going on in the video? Is it politics? Is it nature? And is it lifestyle? What is it? Like, so they try to match these content domains. They try to talk about like what the video is about. Then with the little stars here, they put them, it's about like the engagement logic. So they analyze algorithmic strategies and engagement metrics that amplify certain content. So if they put a 1 on the heart, they're trying to say, okay, I think this pushes the content the most. Like if I press on the heart, I will tell the algorithm that I want to see more of this. And if I if I share the video, it will also push the algorithm. So it's about understanding the engagement metrics of how do I use, how do I not engage with the video. So just to be more aware of it. And then we also talk about different emotions. We look at the comment section. So it's basically all about identifying the domains, examining the strategies, and analyzing emotional appeals, and also understanding the underlying narratives. So this is what we're working on. It's been going quite well, actually. So we've encountered like good feedback from the groups we've been working with. So yeah, so it's a shift from what it's a shift away from what I like to how is this designed to influence me, is what we're trying to do. And yeah, there's a couple of challenges. Growing demand exceeds our resources. We face increasing polarization. There's political shifts and funding uncertainty threatening the sustainability of our work despite its growing importance. So we've got so many inquiries, and we cannot, like, our capacities are like over, like we cannot do any more. And that's kind of unfortunate. It's kind of paradox because there's a high demand. And yeah, we're looking forward to implement this further and disseminate the open educational resources, expand teacher training programs. And yeah, that's it. If you have any questions,
thank you, Serkan.
Go ahead, contact me. These are the websites. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I think we'll probably copy them. Chloe's going to probably copy them across into the chat for people as well too. Yeah, we don't have a lot of time. Unfortunately, there was a question about from Bella about how young students perceive and manage political content and what sort of measures on it do you have. But in fact, I think it's this kind of practice that you introduce, and you're mostly working in classrooms, are you, Serkan?
Classrooms, youth centers. So it's about like their awareness of like the political content or how they manage or how they interact with political content online.
Yeah.
Is that the question?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I would say there's like, sometimes we try to say, hey, the kids are all right. Like we do think that radicalization and online radicalization is a very important and like topic, and it's threatening. But at the same time, there's a lot of kids that know how to work their phones and they know how to work the algorithms, and they're very aware of how their interaction patterns determine what they will keep seeing. So I think there's also like a divide between people working in this field like us, who have certain consumption habits and like usage habits, trying to thinking the way I perceive it is maybe also the way youth perceives it, even if it's like subconsciously informing their decisions. But I think there is a lot of awareness surrounding, at least in the groups that we're working with, it's like nothing new when we talk about like the way algorithms inform their usage habits and how they can maybe also be more sovereign in doing it. Yeah.
That's a good point to make, indeed. Kind of trust the kids to a certain extent.
Trust the kids. Also,
there's a lot more in there. So, look, thanks very much, Serkan. I would tons more I'd love to ask you about, but you share all your resources. I know you said they're available as open source, so that's great. So people can take them and can go and have a look at the links that you shared with us. So, Jordy, sorry for keeping you to last. Thank you so much for joining us. Great name for an organisation, Dare to be Grey. And I know that you're one of the founders. So, over to you to tell us about your work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. Let me boot up my presentation real quick. So my name is Jordy Nijenhuis. I'm the co-founder and director of the organization called Dare to be Grey. We're a nonprofit and we're based in the Netherlands. We work mainly on a European level, but also on a local level, and sometimes in more conflict areas such as Kurdistan, Rwanda, those areas where like polarization is really deeply entrenched. And as our name spells out, we call on people to recognize the gray middle ground in issues that are often perceived as black and white. And you know, I probably don't have to tell you that these black and white worldviews are becoming more vocal and more prominent, especially online over the past couple of years. So this is the field we're working in. We're working in the prevention of polarization, radicalization, disinformation, and hate speech. And we're trying to do two things. One is understanding these issues, especially the link between online and offline. So how does the online world has an effect on society at large? Can we raise awareness around these issues? And on the other hand, we also try to build interventions, often in the shape of positive alternatives. Now, I know I'm the final speaker, and I'm sure you're all a little bit tired, so I figured we're going to look at some pretty pictures. So I'm going to keep it light on text and information, but I would love to show you the work that we're doing, the interventions that we've built, especially related to media literacy, digital literacy, critical thinking, but also the technology we use to understand the online landscape and what kind of lessons we can learn from that. And we always work on a project basis, but basically we focus on three things. One is the prevention. So this entails education, training programs, especially linked to media literacy, digital literacy, critical thinking. Also, our positive alternative narrative campaigns can be found over here, youth empowerment, awareness campaigns. And we do these both online and offline. Where there's a need, we build tailor-made bespoke interventions. Then on the other side, we work on detection. So what kind of trends and themes are we seeing online? What kind of new risks are popping up? And can we understand this properly? Can we understand how this speaks to maybe a wider social media landscape? And also, can we build capacity in civil society to detect these trends themselves? We often use big data and AI to map out the online landscape, and I'll speak a bit more about that later. And then on the third part of the work that we're doing is all about responding to these issues. So here we find our counter narratives. I believe Lynn mentioned that these are often not very effective, and I like to agree with that, but sometimes there's a need for a counter narrative. So also fact checking comes in here, because in essence, fact checking is a counter narrative. But also advocacy when it comes to tighter and stricter regulation for online spaces. We do work with law enforcement when it comes to illegal content, and we work with civil society, but often trusted flaggers to also work on content moderation, especially when it breaches the Digital Services Act. Now, our prevention work it's loosely built on the public health approach to the prevention of radicalization. And basically, it means it's strengthening and robusting those protective factors in communities. And our interpretation of communities is relatively loose. So if we work on the local level, of course, we have communities in different cities or municipalities or neighborhoods even, but we also work on online communities. And our approach is to create content, to create stories, to create persuasive stories that feel and look like they're native for those communities. So we try to understand our audience, we map it, we research it, and then we create content that looks and feels like content they're consuming on a daily basis. So we're not coming in with a message that's preachy or it's telling them to think critically or check their facts. Now we try to leverage it to their way, to their mindset and the way they look at the world. This means that we're always focused on how do we frame these issues? What kind of language do we use? Who's our messenger? Can we find influencers, role models who can leverage that message for us? And then in the end, we always aim for a constructive dialogue in those communities, or we build communities ourselves where they can have these constructive dialogues, but with boundaries. So we always set boundaries that hate speech is not allowed, that it's not okay to attack each other. And we try to set like a new online norm, because often people are, especially in the online context, they're very confrontational. They want to send out their message and they're not listening to another anymore. But if you change and tweak those norms, it can be kind of a relief to many people. That's okay, actually, this is a place where I can chat and also listen and communicate on a different level. And that's what we're always aiming for. And our content comes in many shapes and forms. So here are two examples. The top, or the bottom right is probably one of my favorite stories. It's about Özlem Zekic. She's the first Danish parliamentarian with a minority background. She's Kurdish, and she received a lot of death threats and hate speech when she entered parliament. And instead of blocking these people or reporting these people to the police, actually she responded to each individual who sent her death threats with an invitation to come and sit down and grab a cup of coffee. And she met with these people physically in the real world, even though many people had concerns about her safety, obviously. And she learned a lot from those people who are actively trying to, threaten her. So that's very inspirational, and it shows that positive alternative, right? There are also people who are these haters, and you can also communicate with these people. And maybe, they didn't mean it, and maybe it was an emotional response from their side. So that's very powerful, of course. Now, this might look a little bit like that synthwave or thread wave that Serkan shared. So this is our podcast series called Coping with Dystopia. We know that there's often extremists and radical groups, they carry dystopic elements to their ideologies. And we toyed around with this idea, can we create a podcast show that talks about the real dystopic themes and trends in our society, including climate change, including the disappearance of press freedom. So can we, repackage those kind of, almost human rights conversations in a way that also speaks to people who are in those bubbles. On an extremely more positive side, we also did the Wholesome Wide Web. And the sheet you see on the right is kind of a game you can play as a social media user yourself. And this is about understanding what kind of elements and what kind of strategies can make online communities a bit more positive, a bit more wholesome, including what kind of content moderation is there available in your community? Are people anonymous? What is the purpose of the community you find yourself in? Is it about sharing stories, helping people with their passion, et cetera, et cetera. And it's kind of a cheat sheet to check how wholesome your community is, with some tips about, okay, how can you make your own online community a bit more positive yourself? So again, this is really, digital literacy, but repackaged in a way that's a little bit gamified, a little bit more interactive, as opposed to, telling people, oh, you should do this, or you should learn this. We try to make it fun and engaging for our audiences. So this is an example from the local level. These are all stories from local role models / influencers from a small town in the Netherlands. And we use their stories to redirect youth towards physical communities in their city. Like go to a skate park if you feel lonely. Go to the library if you feel lonely. There's this meetup every month where you can grab dinner for €5 and you can meet people from your same age. But also talking about mental health, about proper or safe internet and social media use. So again, we use real individual personal stories to leverage this information in a way that resonates with the youth. So we also provide some tips about mental health. How can you cope with polarization if you're facing it? And we redirect them to also mental health professionals if there's a need. Super quick, this was a magazine about the impact of online disinformation on real people's lives, because we saw that often it's perceived as something abstract that's kind of out there. We know that it's important, but we never hear about the stories about how these conspiracy theories often tear families apart and relationships apart, and how people are struggling with that. So we try to make these issues a bit more human, a bit more personal as well. I'm going to skip over this one. And this is my final example from our prevention work. This is called the unravel the conspiracy behind the conspiracies. It was a project where we created this online platform in which you can explore how conspiracy theories work, who's behind it, who's profiting from it, how easy it is to build a conspiracy theory yourself. So it's based on the inoculation theory, where we try to create a little bit of a gamified conspiracy world where young people can engage with the topic in a lighthearted, easy to understand way, and you know, in the end, become a little bit inoculated when they face the real virus online. And again, we want to make it fun. So of course, there should be the opportunity to create your own conspiracy theories, because, you know, if you do that, you feel how easy it is. And also you understand the elements that are often used in these conspiracy theories. So you will recognize it once you go out and scroll on your Instagram timeline yourself. And so we're always doing this on a project basis, unfortunately, but this is how the funding landscape works for nonprofits, I'm afraid. And one of our campaigns has been evaluated by an independent evaluator. This campaign was mainly centered around communicating values when it comes to, you know, thinking gray or being gray. So values such as diversity, and especially diversity of thought, that it's okay to embrace diversity of thought, that it's okay to think nuanced, that it's okay to have an open but also constructive debate, etc., etc. And we saw that 42% of our online community said they started to think grayer, so more nuanced, more open, more constructive. But also that 40% of the people who were really active with our campaign, who really engaged with our campaign, mentioned that they would approach conversations with real people in the real world, such as colleagues or family members, in a different way after being exposed to our content. So I believe there's a lot of power in persuasive storytelling and creating messages that align with an audience, because in the end, you can also have an effect on their behavior offline. So this is our fun work. This is where we create beautiful stories and have a lot of fun. The other side of the things that we're doing is more on the research and response. Currently, mainly through the European Observatory of Online Hate. It's a project funded by the European Commission. It's a 2-year project in which we work with a variety of partners, including a tech partner in Belgium called TextGain, the Violence Prevention Network in Germany, plus Meldingstelle Respect. It's the biggest online hate reporting tool in Germany. And we're building tech to map out and understand the online landscape. And we work with law enforcement agencies throughout Europe, plus civil society, to really focus on illegal hate speech and hate crime under the framework of the Digital Services Act. And with this technology, we hope it becomes easier to find these hotspots of online hate and then act on it. So if people are calling for, if people are sharing death threats, obviously that's illegal and that needs to be handled by law enforcement agencies. If people are sharing hate speech that it's illegal in their national context, it needs to be picked up by civil society. And we're trying to build a framework or a system that works for these different actors. In the end, we hope to, kind of clean up the internet in this sense, so we get rid of those black and white worldviews, especially the ones that are illegal. But on the other hand, this dashboard it also functions in a way where we can map out larger trends. So can we see if misogyny is on the rise, or can we see that incel-related content is increasing or spiking online? Do we see a rise of kiwi emojis, for example? And the tech works in all official EU languages. Currently, we're tapped into 10 social media platforms, but we're always trying to get plugged into more of those. And so here are a couple of things we can do with the technologies. Can we compare how toxic these platforms are on an average basis? So where can we actually find more hateful content? So in this case, 4chan, maybe not surprisingly, is a bit more toxic than Facebook or Reddit. But also, can we measure this on a longer duration to identify if the DSA is actually working in regulating these platforms? Plus, we do monthly reports, quarterly reports, and we zoom in on specific topics if we feel there's a need. So, for example, the great replacement, what kind of data can we collect around it? And, can we provide more meaning to how this is being communicated in Europe? And on average, we do analyze about 2 million social media posts per month. So we've got a nice substantial data set to work with. So if you're interested in this project, go to our website, eoh.eu. The training program will start in a month. This is specific for civil society organizations and law enforcement who are working on this, on the hate speech specifically, or disinformation. But our reports are all publicly available on the website, and we also have a nice podcast if you want to digest it slightly differently. And for all of our other work, feel free to reach out over here. Thank you very much.
Jordy, thank you so much. There's a ton of information in there and a ton of things I think people would like you to elaborate on further. We'll have everybody join us in a minute, but just before, I mean, are you engaging directly with the platforms yourselves?
Through the European Observatory, yes.
Yeah. Effectively?
In the past with some success, but the trend from the past year, let's say, with the change of leadership at Twitter, but also the switch at Meta, not as successful. Interestingly enough, TikTok seems to be the only one who's really open to collaborate with civil society currently.
It's interesting that, isn't it? I see, Edvin, you're also nodding to that as well, too. Yeah, we have a few minutes, so we'll maybe pinpoint everybody, all of our speakers that we've had in the session this afternoon, just to sort of see, first of all, if you have any specific questions for one another that have arisen as a result of the discussion. Everything, as we said earlier, we'll make available. Chloe will share that with everybody here who's taking part in the session this afternoon. And thank you. I see you're generously as well offering your email addresses in some cases for further follow-up. So was there anything you yourselves, Serkan, Edvin, Lynn, anything, Jordy, that you would like to just say at this stage, or any points you want to pick up from one another's presentations? Switch your mic on and I'll see it. Lynn, your mic's on. Anything you want to say, to add?
No, I'm just sitting here, gobsmacked by the amount that's been packed into this hour and things I want to follow up from all the things that are there. So I think it's good that there seems to be a groundswell of agreement, doesn't it, about participation and doing things and engaging with young people and adults in a very, very positive way. And that's good to see, and just brilliant ideas. So I think it's been good. Yeah,
absolutely. Lots of different ways to tackle.
Yeah.
Sean saying as we talk about law enforcement. Oh, sorry, Serkan, go ahead.
No, yeah, I also picked up a lot of things, also some like inspirational. I think, Jordy, also on your work that you've been doing, I think, the visual, the design aspect, the storytelling aspect, also the storytelling is something that I think we need to implement more into our methods and then the things that we develop, because sometimes the overarching framework or like a thing that guides you through, also like in didactics and education, can really help. And that's what I kind of picked up from you and from the way you are working. So yeah, thank you for the inspiration, definitely. I already knew that I'm already a fan of storytelling, but I've now become like an even bigger fan, I would say. I would have like a question for everybody because we're in different countries. So how do you go about funding?
Where do you get your money?
Have you got all,
by the way, Just before I say that, of course, Edvin as well too, the whole theatrical experience is very much a storytelling experience. So it's true that goes right the
Also,
way
story.
through.
It's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
true. Sorry, Edvin. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
No.
no.
And I can start with it. For us, it's easy. We get our funding from the government. But what is good in our case, in our center, even if we come from center government, we have a really good outreach both to regional and local level in Sweden, and we actually funded this theater, even if that was the plan that they wanted to do an Ünsal theater, but then we sat down and I was invited to the talk, and then we opened up the conversation, and we funded it, but also it became co-writer with it. So that was the first time they cooperated with an authority, and I think that has been really, really good, because also my background, I did my PhD in sociology on performance art. So I'm kind of, for me, that was really interesting to see how also I could use my experience in this center, trying to figure out how we, since we don't really follow any online activity ourselves, but, we follow your work in a sense, and a lot of actors in that. But I think that, finding ways to find new platforms to discuss this is the one thing that we can do and contribute to. And it's great that because we have some money to do that. So I think that we can contribute money-wise also. So that's great.
I think that's a message, isn't it? Reach out to law enforcement. I mean, it's clearly, it's an area. I mean, we don't have as yet a common definition of hate speech, Jordy. I'm right in saying that, aren't we, across Europe? But maybe that's the direction we should be going in. And then law enforcement comes into play.
Yeah, that's the weird thing about Europe, right? So in the Digital Services Act, there is a mention about hate speech, but there's no definition, and they kind of put it on the member states individually to describe hate speech in that case. So that's a bit messy, yeah.
Yeah. But indeed, that maybe is a direction to go in, because I presume, apart from Edvin, but Jordy and Serkan, and I'm sure Lynn, you also with Common Futures in the UK, funding is a big issue in terms of how does one survive. Yeah,
Huge.
Jordy, any thoughts?
On funding?
Yes, yeah.
I'm always happy to collaborate. But no, it's a big question, and it's not becoming easier, right? So we see, we've seen the impact of what's happening in the United States. We had our own mini version of that in the Netherlands as well, where they cut 2/3 of the development budgets. And then we see that big NGOs who are often funded through national governments are trying to fish in the same pool we're currently fishing in. So the field is becoming more competitive, and I'm really concerned about this trend. And I'm as a director, I'm scared about the future of many organizations, including my own.
Yeah, it's very hand to mouth. Constantly bidding, constantly trying to get money, and trying to persuade governments and local authorities that we don't want 6 months, but we need consistent, we need 3-year projects at least. And they say, oh no, here's some money for 6 months, and then you'll then spend all your time scrabbling around for the next 6 months. And so it's very, very difficult.
Look, we don't want to end. Sorry, Serkan?
Just one thing I want to say, if anyone wants to collaborate, because we have different skill sets here, right? We have didactics, we have people different fields that could collaborate in a way. Let's maybe apply for some EU funding. Right? We all from Europe, right? If anybody wants to do that, we can connect.
And start approaching our law enforcement authorities across Europe as well too. I think it's also, when I look at Edvin. Look, we're going to come to an end now. Thank you very much. But in fact, that actually makes it very easy for me to say. I mean, one of the things we try and do in the Media Learning Association is to foster collaboration and to foster opportunities. So we are more than happy to act as a conduit when opportunities come up, funding opportunities come up. We'll happily put messages into our newsletter of people. We can also informally redirect people as well too. So feel free to come back to us in terms of being able to help this community to find. And we're also scrabbling for funding ourselves, of course, as well. We're also an NGO. This is just the slide that Chloe's just put up. Is just a quick reminder of who we are and what we do. We're now we're 105 organizations. We're very busy in the area of media literacy, digital media literacy, and also in the use of media generally in education. And as Chloe says, this is what spring looks like here with us. We have our next session of this Wednesday webinar series on the 21st of May. Starting at 2, and it's called Beyond the Birds and the Bees, Media Literacy in the Digital Age of Sexuality. So please feel free to join us. You can register now. As you know, registering for all of our events is for free, so we're very happy to see you join us, and we also make the recordings of these sessions available afterwards. Do stay tuned. Do also subscribe to our newsletter if you haven't already done so, because it's something that we try to also use as a way to make sure people are well informed of what's happening. We try to include information about new calls from, for example, the European Commission. So if those are coming up, happy to share them. Thanks, Etienne. I see your private message. You're meeting French law enforcement tomorrow morning. Your insights are so welcome. So you can fly the flag for us with that community, which would be very much appreciated. I'd like to thank everybody who joined us for the session this afternoon. So our speakers, Lynn, Edvin, Serkan and Jordy, thanks so much for giving us your time this afternoon and sharing very, very interesting stories, and of course lots of resources and inspirational ideas. I'd also like to thank my colleague Chloe, of course, who puts the session together and who has been running it for us this afternoon, and I'd like to thank you for joining us.